People love to talk about the haves and the have-nots, right? I mean, the poor and the wealthy. What is the biggest difference between poor people and wealthy people? Well, it all comes down to one word, and that word is risk. To the people who are poor, they look at risk one way. And to the people who are rich, they look at risk a different way. Because in my comments, I get a ton of people saying, come on, Kris, like, can you show me the way to invest in real estate or the market or other things where there's like no risk at all? And I'm like, okay, I got you. In today's video, we are gonna talk about no risk investments and whether they exist. So the world is filled with very, very low risk investments. Like for just a moment, I just want you to think about like your bank. You put money in there and the bank's like, when you put your money with us, we're gonna give you 0.0 nothing percent, just so you can feel good about giving your money to us. But do you know what your bank is doing? They do this thing called fractional lending. The government literally says, oh, you're FDIC insured. Literally, you've got $10,000 of deposits in the bank. Go ahead and lend out 100 grand and go make money, charge 4, 5, 6, 7% on 100 grand. And you know what the bank does when they make 5, 6, or 7% on fake money? Well, it's a 10x return to them. It's like making 50% or 100% return on their money. Meanwhile, they're sharing almost none of it back with you, which is why they give you a dum-dum, a sucker, after you leave the bank. Investing without any risk at all is fundamentally a flawed approach because it overlooks the very nature of how wealth actually grows over time. You've heard this relationship of no risk, no reward, or high risk, high reward. We've been trained to think that if you want to get a big reward, you have to take on a lot of risk. And I also don't entirely know if that's true. All investments inherently carry some level of risk, and trying to eliminate the risk often results in minimal gains. Low-risk strategies like bonds and certificates of deposits or savings accounts typically barely offer return that can even compete with inflation. For instance, in the last 4 years, we've been dealing with inflation around 4%. But did you know in 2023 that the average savings account paid out a return of 0.39%? They basically gave you 0.25% where inflation was at 4%, 10 times higher. That means that any money you had parked in the bank, whatever it was gaining, it was losing 10 times that in the form of inflation. This also means that money parked in low-risk investments often lose purchasing power over time because inflation will whittle your dollar away. For example, you've been trained that putting money in a 401k is smart. You do that for retirement. Think about it. Your company is going to give you a company match. It's like free money. You're like, this is awesome. I'm going to take some money out of my paycheck. Every pay period, I'm going to set it aside. The company's going to match it. And it's very low risk. I'm like, yeah, the risk is so low that they just came out with the 2024 average ROI on 401ks. And it's 4.2%. With inflation coming in at 4.1%, which basically means that inflation has wiped out your 401k. And I know what you're thinking, but Kris, I mean, the match and everything, like it's still gotta make sense, right? Well, since the average 401k bank account balance is $254,000 at 65 years old, accounting for only 3 years of what you need in 30 years of retirement, I'd say that's a pretty broken system. By the way, the 401k is a scam for 5 different reasons, and if you want to know what they are, click right here and watch this video. Now, there is a tool for helping you understand risk and reward, and it's 3 letters. It's called ROI. It stands for return on investment. And I want you to think of an ROI this way. I put my money somewhere, whether it's in a bank account or a 401k or the stock market, and I'm expecting it to give me something back. What it's giving you back is a percentage in relation of what you put out. So for example, I have $10,000 here. And if I was going to earn a 4% return on this, because that's what I put in my 401k this year, then 4% on $10,000 is $400. I put $10,000 in, and this year I get $400 back. But by the way, inflation just ate up $400, so you kind of didn't make any money anyway. According to Investopedia, a 7% ROI is generally considered good. And if you take 401ks and blend it with IRAs and the S&P, most people are hoping to basically make 5 or 6%. Yeah, in terms of that, 7% is good. But here's where 7% falls short. If the money that you were setting aside for retirement was only earning 6 or 7% over 40 years, the question is, would it actually be enough to reach your retirement goal? And this is where the answer gets scary. The answer is no by a long shot. In most cases, you have to be earning at least 20% a year on your money or higher and have it compound to actually have enough money for retirement. which means that single-digit ROIs, anything under 10%, your 401k 4%, your IRA 5%, your stock market 7%, they're all single digits. And you blend them all together, and the bottom line is, while it might cause you to feel safe, I don't know how safe you're gonna feel at 65 years old when you found out that your entire strategy didn't work. Oddly enough, and ironically enough, at 65 years old, you're now living your risk philosophy in the reverse. You didn't feel risky for those 40 years that you were saving money, but now that you don't have enough money, you have risked everything. If you paid off your house, prepare to sell it. If you saved a little bit of money, you're gonna consume it so fast, which basically means get back to work or rely on charity. On the other hand, we have higher ROI investments. And a lot of people think, oh, if your return is greater, then your risk must be greater. And while this is usually true, I think it's important to note that it's not always true. For example, if you invest $50,000 into real estate, your first question might be, when am I going to get my money back? Well, you've missed the entire point of the investment, which is to amplify compounding returns, not over months, but over decades, so that $50,000 in 2 decades potentially becomes millions of dollars. So instead of asking, when am I going to get my money back, a better question is, will this investment yield enough of a return to meet my financial goals? If you invest $50,000 in real estate and you average a 25% year over year for 20 years, it turns into $4.3 million. And I got news for you. For the average person, that's more than enough to retire on. Which means that the difference between 4, 5, or 7% and 25% is not the percentage points in between, because the compounding effect makes 25% 27 times more money than your 401k or your IRA returns. So if you're going to get a higher return, is there going to be greater risk? Well, it actually comes down to these 2 questions. Are you playing a short game or are you playing a long game? For example, real estate, like we've been talking about, is a long game. It's like, well, there's higher ROI, so there must be higher risk. And I'm like, but because it's a long game, much less so, versus day trading. You've heard of these people. It's just like, I put money in my account, I stare at the market, and for 30 to 60 minutes every day, I try to make 10% of my money or 20% of my money. And it has a get rich quick energy to it. And by the way, I've got buddies that are very successful at it, but for every successful person, there are loads of losers that are making money off of your losses. Which means instead of associating a higher return with higher risk, you should look beyond that and ask, is this a quick return or this is a long return? If it's a longer return and it has sustained ROI, then it's probably less risky. Let me give you an example of this. I just conducted a longitudinal study on the last decade of my real estate investments. I evaluated 2,130 rentals across 5 different markets in the top 5 markets, and I found out that year over year, we're averaging 60.6% annual ROI. Now, 60% is not just 10 times better than 6% in the stock market, but because of the compounding effect, it's wildly better. But because it happens over the long run and it's not as volatile as the stock market, what that really means is that you have security and simply a much higher ROI, which is also why 90% of all millionaires made their money in real estate. So looking for investments that have no risk, I don't think that's going to give you a benefit because it's not going to outweigh inflation. Instead, you should be asking these questions. How do I take measured risks with high ROI investments? In other words, something like real estate. Kris, could I really get 30, 50, or 60% return on my money? How do I do that in a calculated fashion? Here's another option. Partner with experts, partner with mentors, partner with people where money is their game. For example, real estate has been my game on over $2 billion of real estate transactions. Because of my expertise, I can tell you, I know what it feels like to lose $1 million in real estate. But that was a long time ago, and I've since gotten better at the game, which means your chances of succeeding, for example, with someone like me that's done 6,000 deals is a lot higher than if you're doing your first deal. You also have options on investing, for example, in high ROI franchises. I want to buy a business. I want it to make me money. All of these different things can be good ideas, but the most important thing is to do your due diligence. And ultimately, you need a game plan. You have a very limited supply of money to start with. And the question is, how do you invest it intelligently where you're going to get enough of a return so that at the end of the day, you get the ROI that you want? You shouldn't judge that just by the risk associated with ROI alone. You need to go deeper than that. What you really need is a game plan. that can help you understand ROI across different types of investments so that you can take calculated risks to make sure that your strategy can be enough to get where you want to go instead of a guarantee that you'll never make it. If you'd like to get a free game plan to say, okay, Kris, based on what I have to work with, which might be a lot or a little, how do I find investments with safe enough ROIs that can get me where I want to go? That game plan comes to you today for free. Click the link below, request a free game plan. And when you're talking to my team, this is a little bit of a secret. I want you to ask them for a free copy of my Have It All book. It talks about the 5 ROIs that you need to become a multimillionaire in under a decade. If you'd like to get a free copy of it, request a free game plan, talk to my team, say, show me my options, show me the money, and give me a free copy of the book. Click the link below, let's go. By the way, if you want to know what this book is about, it's 5 different investments that can help anyone become wealthy literally in under 5 years. I know because I started my journey at 23 years old and I was retired and financially free by the age of 26. Everything I've learned over the last 20 years, I've poured into this brand new book, Have It All, the 5 investments to get you where you want to go. And if you're ready, go ahead and click right here and let me show you this video giving you a synopsis on the book.